Hello, and welcome to Envision, the show where we talk to successful entrepreneurs to find out what drives them, lessons they've learned from their business career, and thoughts on the Cape Fear region. I'm your host, Jonathan Rowe, and with us today is Charlene Duprey, co-founder of South in France. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's really exciting to have you here today, and there's so much for us to talk about, so we're going to try and pack it in 30 minutes
Okay.
so our audience can get as much as possible. Let's first start out. You grew up in Wilmington.
That's correct.
And I think you've just, knowing your background and being overseas and in New York, and sort of you've had an amazing sort of experiences, you've probably always had the entrepreneurial bug, but what sort of drove you to leave Wilmington and go off on these great adventures overseas, and sort of how that shaped where you are now?
Well, I think that I have an adventurous spirit, and I'm a gypsy at heart. I had grand, lofty goals, and I wanted to travel the world, and was fortunate to do some of that in my younger years. I went to the University of Chicago, and while in Chicago, did a couple of study abroad programs in France, and I absolutely fell in love with France, and of course a French man, and that really set things in motion for me to want to explore the rest of the world. So when I graduated, I worked for a cruise line, first in their corporate offices, and then I had an opportunity to work shipside, where I got quite a lot of traveling under my belt, and had the opportunity to live and work in different countries. And eventually, my husband and I ended up in New York City, where we lived for the past several years before relocating back to this area.
What do you think, both in your international travels, and again, for some of our students who watch this show, what did you learn in your international travels and maybe on the cruise line that you think helped prepare you for being an entrepreneur and running your own business?
Well, one thing about traveling is you have to be flexible. You have to learn to go with the flow. Things don't turn out the way you want to when you're traveling all the time, and you have to be very creative about finding solutions to whatever problems you're faced with. And all of those skills definitely helped me as an entrepreneur. I think too, having different perspective. I saw lots of fabulous things. I remember going into a shop in Rhodes, Greece, and it was a little bakery, and instead of having price tags, they had taken local stones from around the island and had painted them with the prices of all of their merchandise, and that just struck me as such a unique idea and something I wouldn't have seen elsewhere. So I was always, even as a traveler, looking at how other small businesses were executing their businesses around the world, and I think some of that rubbed off translated into my business today.
And did you know you were going to start your own business early on? Is that something you've always sort of aspired to or dreamed towards, or how?
I never knew when I was in school or a college student that I wanted to be an entrepreneur per se. I had diverse interests, and I think that's really important. I love everything, really. I love marketing, I love advertising, I love psychology, I even like bookkeeping and do most of my own bookkeeping. So I had a lot of different interests and a very creative spirit, and was looking for a career that would encompass all of that. Come to find out, I think being a business owner is probably the best one for it.
And how did you know, so you're in New York, and your husband Pascal, and the two of you are living there, and he's got a job at, I think, one of the top restaurants, if I'm not mistaken, in New York, and it still is, and you're working at a recruiting firm for bilingual people. Now, how did you know to make the move back to Wilmington, and when the time was right to start a business?
I have two answers to that question. I was in New York on 9/11. And that was a very pivotal turning point for me, because that's a day, if of all days, where you reflect on where you are in your life and what you're doing with your life. And when you think that could have been me, you start to reevaluate your decisions. And I didn't feel completely fulfilled in the work that I was doing, and felt that there was something more. And by that point, had a pretty strong inkling that I wanted to try entrepreneurial endeavors, as did my husband. So that was a pivotal moment for us. We did not leave immediately and move to Wilmington, but it set the wheels in motion. The other thing is, I think starting a business is kind of like having a child. People always say there is no good time to have a child. It just happens. You just have to jump into it. Right. And I think the same is true for starting a business. They don't talk a lot about what it's like to start your own business, and I think that's for a reason. If you knew what was involved, you probably wouldn't do it. I think it's the same for having kids.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Right.
And actually what makes it even more interesting in your case is that you're a husband and wife starting a business, just as you would be in a lot of cases having a child.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, starting a business together, the two of you, not only how you came up with the idea, but starting the business, I guess from the get-go, just together.
Yes.
How intense that is.
Well, my husband's background is culinary. It's all he knows is the culinary world. So for him, it was a very obvious decision. He wanted to be in a food-related business. In fact, his initial interest was to start a restaurant. But restaurant startups are extremely risky. I once read something like 97% of independent startup restaurants fail within the first 5 years. I'm not that much of a gambler. So I didn't want to invest our life savings in something that could have a 97% failure rate. My other concern was that I worked a really hectic schedule in New York, long hours, as do most New York City professionals, and I didn't want to leave those long hours to work 100 hours in a restaurant where I was tied to the business and couldn't leave. So in looking for a compromise, we decided to do something food-related that was not the restaurant business, and that's what eventually led us to doing South and France bonbons. We also wanted something that was a blend of our cultures. We wanted something that had a French feel to it, but I also felt it was important to infuse my Southern background into it as well, and bonbons was a really good fit in terms of a product that did both.
And it sounds perfect. We all know it's very yummy, but it also sounds perfect as a business. Now you mentioned how you just love to learn, and mentioned accounting, the bookkeeping, all the different pieces. Early on, was that a challenge, or what were some of the initial things? Because I assume Pascal is spending most of the time in the kitchen, which leaves you to run the business.
That's right. Well, you mentioned being husband and wife. One of the initial challenges was working together. My husband and I had never worked together, and negotiating that partnership was very different than negotiating our relationship as husband and wife. And so early on there was a lot of tension and a lot of exploration as to how we would divide our responsibilities with the business. Naturally, I gravitated towards the things that were more on the business side, the marketing, the bookkeeping, the customer service, and my husband tend to take over everything that was production, packaging, shipping, etc. So we eventually found some equilibrium there.
Do you have advice? Because I think a lot of people, watching the show either are in similar situations or might be thinking about starting a business with friends or other relatives or spouses. You sort of hinted at some, but what's some of the advice to make it work as effectively as you guys have been?
Advice to husbands and wives?
Working together to start a business.
Don't do it. I would say that you have to be really committed to making it work out, and you also have to know when to back off. My husband's domain is his domain, my domain is my domain, and although I would like to tell him how to do things differently, many times I try not to, because you wouldn't do that with your coworkers, and you have to treat him the same way. So it really became looking at each other as business partners, not as husband and wife.
And how does that then filter over to sort of, I guess, the personal life? Because it can be very easy. A lot of us like to talk about business and our jobs just normally outside of work. How do you then balance that aspect?
Well, it's definitely changed our whole relationship, which I think has gotten a lot stronger because we live together, we work together, we're pretty much together 24/7, and that was a big change for us. And I would say we have strengthened communication. We're much better at communicating now, and we try not to talk about the business when we are in our off time, but it's kind of like having kids. You hear about the parents who go on their date night to get away from the kids, and the whole time they're on the date they talk about the children. We have a tendency to do that with the business. So
okay,
it's all consuming.
But I also think it's been very inspiring what the two of you have done. And so back to sort of the idea of you taking the business side, what were some of the early things that you had to become, that you were already probably experienced at, but had to become an expert and really good and really creative at, the marketing, the bookkeeping, those things early on? What was that like in just starting a business?
Well, we made a lot of mistakes, which I think all entrepreneurs do. And one of our biggest mistakes was undercapitalization. We had estimated what we thought we would need to get our business rolling and how much money we would need until we would be getting profit from the business, and we grossly underestimated that. As a result, we were almost immediately caught in a cash flow crunch situation, which requires, one of my favorite quotes is necessity breeds ingenuity. And we had no choice but to get pretty ingenious with how we were going to market our company. So that, just by necessity, I knew I had to develop some low-cost guerrilla marketing techniques to get the word out there. This is who we are and this is what we're doing. So I learned really quickly how not to spend money and how to spend money eventually, where we could really place our focus. So that was a big lesson learned. Another thing that I would not recommend doing, the beginning of being in business is really like a chaos state. You're in complete and total chaos, and it's all you can do just to kind of keep things held together. So one of the things that easily can fall by the wayside is bookkeeping. I was keeping all of my receipts. I had everything together. I was filing monthly taxes, but I didn't have my QuickBooks set up from the get-go. And let it go for almost 9 months to a year before it was time to do that first initial tax accounting, and had to do it all at once. And I had an amazing bookkeeper who helped me do that, Quicksilver Solutions. But had I been able to do it over again, I would have said start your bookkeeping from the beginning and make sure you stick with it, because that was a really big mistake.
I think that's tremendous advice. And in terms of the guerrilla marketing thing, let's maybe talk, and you've got some examples of that as well, because I think obviously early on you can have a phenomenal product, but either if nobody knows about it or you're not communicating it in the right way, and that takes, in a lot of cases that takes money. What were some of the creative techniques? Because I think you're brilliant at creative marketing and branding.
Well, one of the things that I did, and again, this was all really came about from necessity. It wasn't necessarily a strategic decision. One of the things that happened to us was very early on, we decided to do a chocolate festival that we weren't really ready to do. And so we had to scramble to get product together, to do lots of logistic things. Marketing was not one of our #1 priorities. And as we were looking at maybe 2 days before the festival, it sort of dawned on me that although we had business cards and a few low-key, small-scale marketing pieces, we had no banners, we had no signage, and we were going to this festival. I didn't know how people were even going to be able to spot who we were from across the room. And I grabbed a hat that actually existed before our business was ever even a concept. It was from an old cabaret act I used to do. And I said, you know that crazy hat I have with all those desserts on it? I'm going to wear that hat, because people will see it across the room and they'll wonder who's that crazy lady in that weird hat. And they'll come over. This is my hat.
This is the
so I wore this hat at my very first festival, and called myself Charlene, the Bonbon Queen, and people would come over. The hat just begs for commentary, right? So people would come over and say, what are you doing? Why are you wearing that hat? And that was my hook, to really talk about the business and get them into learning a little bit about who we were. So that was definitely a low budget marketing technique. The hat was so popular that when I came home the weekend after, I thought, how can I use this hat to further promote the business? And a few days later, someone called and wanted to place an order for bonbons for her boss. It's actually a local doctor in town. His name is Dr. Love. I'll never forget it. And she wanted me to come and give bonbons to Dr. Love. And I said, well, you know what I could do for you? I could do a singing telegram. And it just sort of came out of my mouth. And she said, oh, let me think about that and call you back. And I thought, oh, I've scared this woman off. She'll never call back again. Well, sure enough, she called back and she said, we like it. We want you to come do a singing telegram. The concept there was that I needed to get as many people as possible. So if I walked into a doctor's office doing a singing telegram, instead of marketing to just one person, I was going to be marketing to 40 or 50 people. And I was all about the numbers game. How can I get in front of the most people with the least amount of cost or exposure? So I went and did a singing telegram, and it was a hit. hit. And I thought, let's make singing telegrams a part of our business. And to this day, I still do singing telegrams in public venues, which is great for me because I always get exposure to more than a couple of people, but a restaurant or an office building.
Who knew the cabaret experience would come in so handy?
Who knew? That's the great thing about being an entrepreneur, is that you can incorporate all of your interests and your strengths into the business, and I definitely worked to do that. My motto early on was anything to sell a bonbon, and we pretty much did anything and everything.
And interesting, because I think your business of selling bonbons isn't just tied to this area. I mean, you do a lot of stuff. I mean, you get orders online, by phone, and ship things out. Did you look at the business as something that was going to be, traditionally sometimes people don't think of chocolates or things like that as a global business or international or national business. Did you have that mindset from the beginning that you wanted to sell?
Yes, that was one thing we were very clear on from the beginning. We wanted to have an online presence, a strong online presence, and we intended for the bonbons to be a mail order business. In fact, when we were at that very first chocolate festival, which was the weekend we launched our company, there was a woman there from California who tried our bonbons. And we came back from the festival, and it was sort of that initial, okay, we got through the very first thing we had to do. And I was sitting there thinking, what next? Now what do we do? Okay. And the phone rang. And it was a woman from California calling to say that she had been to the festival and she wanted to ship bonbons to her boyfriend in California. Could we do that? And I took her order very calmly, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I started crying. And my husband's like, why are you crying? And I said, I think it's gonna work. So that was a really emotional moment for me, because that was really our goal. And now, today, if you Google bonbons, after a lot of hard work, we have organically made our way to the top of that list, and we have a lot of people who order from us and find us via online searches.
Has it been you who sort of kept up with technology? Because I mean, obviously over the past 5 years or so, I mean, you've added Twitter and Facebook and all the different things, and you're very active on that with videos and things like that, and hopefully our show will be on your website too. How have you been able to not only keep up to date on that stuff, but also be active in putting the content out there while all the other things you're doing in the business?
When you're a business owner, you are your own accountant. Sometimes you are your own IT person. When my printer breaks, I'm the one who has to fix it. I'm my own marketing copywriter. You wear, no pun intended, a lot of different hats. And so I had to jump into it immediately, and I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I love to learn new things and keep up with the technology. One of my tips is that I am friends with and network with business owners who are younger than me. And so they help to keep me abreast of what the newest technologies are. My friend, who's a 25-year-old entrepreneur, was the one who introduced me to Twitter in the very early stages. And I said, oh, this looks good, let me jump on this. So I just try to learn from others and keep current. I recently got concerned that perhaps my skills weren't as fresh as they needed to be, and I took a class, and I was relieved to see that I'm still in the game. Yeah. So that was good. But a lot of it's just learning on my own and watching and listening what other entrepreneurs are doing and incorporating that into my own business.
I think you bring up a good point, especially for a lot of business owners that are watching. You sort of talked about, you mentioned younger people, but networking. How have you gone about that, and how important has that been, as you're running the business?
Well, when I first started the business, my mantra was say yes to everything. Any opportunity that sounded like it could even be remotely interesting, I was there. So the first year that we were in business, we worked literally 365 days. I went to every single networking opportunity that I could go to. If there was a class being held for business people, I went to the class. And that exposure really helped. In fact, I knew it was working when people would say, I saw you at such and such an event, and I wasn't even there. And that's when I knew that I was really doing a good job of getting around, because people thought I was in places I wasn't even going to. And those early connections and that initial push really helped a lot. And I would say that was true even for the internet. When I started my blog, I blogged every single day in the beginning. Now I don't, but it's that initial push that really helps to get the word out and get you out there. And as a result of those connections, that's how, from from that early networking, that's how I met my bookkeeper. That's how I met the person who does all the photography for my website. That's how I met my appliance repair guy, who has saved us more times than I can count when we call on a Friday night and say, I need you right now. Even though it's after hours, he'll usually come because he's a networking peer. So those initial contacts really helped create a foundation for our business. You
mentioned early on it was 365 days. How do you manage your time? I mean, obviously you've got boundless energy. You're doing all these things. You love to absorb them. You've got a lot of passions, not only in this, but in everything you do. How do you manage your time to get it all done?
Well, I wish I could say that I have, a magic, a magic solution for that.
Magic hat.
I know, but I don't. We work a lot. We work long, hard days. One of the keys is we do not have a television, so we're not. We kept it really distraction-free early on because it was all about the business. I wish that I could manage my time better. I think like most people, there are lots of things I want to do in the course of a day that I don't get done. But I just try to do as much as I can. And you learn, little tricks along the way in terms of multitasking. One thing that worked really well for me, blogs, again, are very time consuming. It takes a lot of time to write a blog entry and post it. But I learned that if I batch it, it's kind of like you hear about those ladies who do all the cooking on Sunday night, so that throughout the week they have meals that they can pull out of the freezer or out of the fridge. Same thing with my blogs. I'd write a whole bunch at once, and then I could release them over time. And so learning tricks like that helped me a lot in being able to, quote, do it all.
And let's go into the kitchen maybe for a minute, your husband's domain, and talk a little bit about, now you've done some really interesting things. I mean, you've done, I think, Valentine's Day events, and you have people come down for sort of a weekend where they stay in a bed and breakfast and enjoy a French dinner and make bonbons. How has all that works? I mean, you've almost added new product categories within your business. Talk a little bit about how those come about and how that works through the operations side of the kitchen.
Sure. Well, one of the things that people really enjoy are our bonbon making demonstrations. We have what's called a bonbon party, and small groups come to us and we teach them how bonbons are made. And we always say it's a little bit of learning and a lot of tasting, so people have a great time. Now, that again came about as a result of necessity. We were exhibiting at a business-focused trade show. And I wasn't sure that just having bonbons to offer as a corporate gift or a referral gift was enough. And I thought, well, what else do companies always look for? And I said, those big companies, they're always looking for employee incentives and team building exercises. What do we have to offer that would be a great team building exercise? And I came up with the concept of a bonbon party. And so that's how the first bonbon party came about. It was actually a Merrill Lynch representative who did our first party, and she learned about it as a result of that trade show. One thing led to another, and now we do parties for all kinds of groups. Book clubs, women's clubs, bachelorette parties, and that definitely did create a whole new segment or stream of revenue for us. It was also a marketing tool. The idea was, how can we get people talking about our product? Our product is unique and it's labor intensive, and people don't really know what a bonbon is if they haven't been exposed to it before. And so it was really an educational tool to bring people in, let them experience it, and then they would walk out raving fans and tell everybody, guess what I did last night?
Well, let's talk about a second the bonbon, because at the center of the sphere of business and all these different things you're doing is the bonbon.
Yes.
What is it about the bonbon?
Well, one of the things I've always said, even though our bonbons are amazingly delicious. Yes. You can see this is one of our Mother's Day packages, because Mother's Day is coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And when you open it, you see all the bonbons inside. We have 7 different flavors, and they're color-coded. We have a legend system, so you can figure out what flavors are which. And bonbons are different from truffles or other chocolates because they're really all about the filling. What matters is what's in the inside. So the coconut filling or the coffee filling or the peanut butter filling, and there's a thin layer of chocolate on the outside. So people who really aren't even chocolate lovers oftentimes really like the bonbons because it's a hint of chocolate and a lot of really delicious filling. Now, because they're handmade, they taste really good. We use real products, real ingredients, and that's, I think, part of the reason we won Best New Product at the National Candy Show. It's not formulaic. There aren't a lot of additives and preservatives. It's really like going back to the roots of chocolate making and confection making. You know, the bonbon is definitely important just as a product itself, but I think it's also what the bonbon evokes. And I've said from the get-go, you know, and I think this is true in any business, you don't just sell widgets, you know, you don't just sell whatever it is you're selling. We sell more than bonbons. And for us, it's the idea of decadence. It's a simple, you know, affordable luxury. A lot of the people who buy our bonbons, especially people online, that's a running joke. You know, they tease people, oh, you know, you're going to live the life now that you retire. Or they get sick and they say, now's your chance to sit around eating bonbons. You broke your leg. Right. Here's your opportunity. Yeah. So I think people love that concept of the bonbon is permission to indulge and to enjoy yourself. And we definitely try to translate that in our marketing and the way that we present the company.
Has Pascal, your husband, is he still the only one in the kitchen making all these?
For the most part, yes.
Wow.
During peak seasons, we learned quickly, and this was something we didn't know going into this, that our business is very seasonal. We do the bulk of our sales in Christmas and Valentine's Day. Easter and Mother's Day are like a shoulder season. And then the summer, we don't sell as many bonbons. There just aren't any chocolate eating holidays in the summer.
Not yet, right?
Right, not yet. So, you know, during the year, Pascal can work independently and he's able to manage his time really well. When it comes to peak seasons, sometimes we have to bring in a little extra help.
As we sort of wrap up here, what does the future hold for South and France?
That's a good question. If you had asked me, we've been in business for 5 years now. If you had asked me 5 years now where I would be today, I would have given you, you know, I would have thought we would have been on Oprah and our product would be in every store. I tend to dream very big, and one of the lessons that I learned is that entrepreneurship takes time. It is a long journey, and you know, they say it takes about 5 years to be profitable. When you start a business, and I always thought, oh yeah, but that's for normal people, not for people like me. It'll take me 6 months. Well, guess what? We're at the 5-year mark, and we're just now hitting a point where we've figured it out and we know what works. 10 years from now, I would like to see us wholesaling. We're currently not doing wholesaling in some select markets, maybe like Whole Foods or Fresh Market. Yeah. And I'd love to see us have a retail location.
Would it be Wilmington?
Perhaps,
okay.
Perhaps. We've been scoping real estate here for a long time. We haven't found the perfect fit yet. And one of our decisions, I think, was a very good one. We were just about to make that move right before the economy hit crisis. And had we done that, I don't know that we'd still be in business today. So we played it conservatively, and I think it has helped us to continue on.
Well, although it's not Oprah, we appreciate you being on the Envision show, and although we are trying to break into the French market, so hopefully you can be our bridge into the French market, because you can see our episodes online, and obviously our viewers can get to your website at southandfrance.com.
Yes. To
get some bonbons with Mother's Day coming up, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan.
And thank you for joining us for Envision. We look forward to seeing you again next time.